Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Medium's World, Day 7 of this amazing event. I'm so grateful that this evening we have opportunity to talk with Kendra, who I'll be introducing in just a few moments. But before we begin, I'm going to invite you to find your breath, where we can now come into a space united and connected through the heavens, as if we are all sitting together in one room as opposed to virtually around the world. So I invite you to close your eyes and take a really deep breath in, just giving presence to this moment, this sacred time that we've cultivated and we've created. Each of us have created this event to bring it to light, to bring it into possibility. It comes in answer to my heart's asking, to your heart's asking. And as we find our breath, we just relax into this knowing, into the celebration and the gratitude, this deep, deep sense of appreciation for the opportunity to connect and to have this beautiful, illuminating conversation, this trusted space where we can show up in who we are and show up in all that we do and in everything that we are being asked or invited to be. This collective of what is our soul's greater purpose that unites us, that brings us together, where we may have by chance been together in many other lifetimes, where now we come together, reunited, reconnected with such divine purpose. There's an intimacy that happens through our mediumship abilities. There is a depth of understanding and awareness through a bond that moves through space and time, a bond that holds us, that helps us to feel safe and secure in who we are, and allows us the privilege of moving forward and expressing our light, our joy, our love into the world. A bond of community, whether we are socialized or whether we've ever met personally, there is a deeper resonance of truth, a deeper resonance of this light that reinforces a solidarity and a connection like no other. And so we give thanks for this. We rejoice in this. And as we settle into this conversation, we just allow for a space and the opening for us to unite even further. And for those who are tuning into this series that are dealing with the loss of a loved one, we honor you. That through this prayer and through this blessing, we invite you to know that your loved one is with you, that it still remains connected, heart to heart, through space and time, just in one form and another. So through this breath, we also bless upon your troubled heart, your troubled mind, with deep, deep compassion. And so as we give thanks for the divine, the healing blessing of this compassion, the healing blessing of this light, this loving intervention that envelops all of us with tenderness and merciful grace. That this unconditional love, that through all the layers of our entire being, that we just surrender any resistance and find within the willingness to open up our life, to open up our hearts, to be vulnerable, trusting, and delighted in this divine intimacy this loving connection to life, to the universe, and to those on the other side. And through this breath and through this space and time, that it brings joy to our hearts, and that we all can live and express within this state of divine compassion to be of service to a greater divine plan, that greater divine plan of love unfolding. And for this and so much more, we say thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is. Amen. 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 Oh, so wonderful. Oh my gosh. Thank you for taking time out to be here. Thank you for, your prayer of asking. This is why this event came together, is because so many of you had been asking and seeking, and I just followed the guidance and brought us all together. So I'm so happy that you're here, and I'm really exceptionally happy, of course, to welcome tonight's guest to our conversation, Kendra Gerein, who is a holistic success strategist. She's an empowerment coach, a spiritual mentor, and she uses her knowledge of psychology with spirituality, her connection to the other side, to really help to empower others to deeply find not only inner peace in their life, but helping them to really live a life that is of purpose, and of course the expression of what is their most authentic truth. Hello, Kendra. Welcome to our conversation. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here, Bonnie. Thank you. I love being in
Yeah.
these circles.
Oh my gosh. Could you feel the energy building like probably about 20 minutes ago, or there was just this waft that came in and said, okay, we've got important things to talk about tonight?
Totally. Yeah, it feels like those sitting with us are really intentional. So I love that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. I just really love that you get to be here tonight, and we've had this chance to have this conversation. You are someone who has an incredible story in your mediumship journey, and I know that what you have to share is really going to give so much value to those who are tuning in. Kendra, let's start out. I mean, I know your story very, up close and personal, because we've worked together in so many different facets. But just if you want to share with the guests that are in circle here as well, when did you start having experiences with the spirit world?
Bonnie, I was thinking about that, and that's probably one of the hardest questions somebody could ask me.
Leave it to me.
I don't think I have memory that far, to be honest, because I was just really born receiving spiritual stuff from a really young age. The first one that I remember was knowing that my grandparents died at a really young age, even, and waking up and just telling my mom, I'm like, Grandma died last night. And she's like, okay. And like, Grandma was sick and hung out and stuff. And yeah, then sure enough, at noon, they got a phone call and Grandma had died. And my mom called me at school and she's like, how did you know? And I was like, I just knew. Like, what do you mean? How did I know? Like, it's just
Right.
something it was right. It was my truth. Um, and yeah, from a really young age, I always said really profound things that a 3-year-old probably shouldn't say. Um, and a lot of people didn't question it because there was a knowing, I think, in the room of like, ooh, that's true for whatever reason. So
Right.
I've been having experiences before I could even remember them.
Right, right. So like it's that's where you and I are, so parallel in things, because I don't ever remember not having experiences with the other side. Like when you're saying, like, when did it start? I'm like from the day I was born. Like I don't know how else to explain it. Even if I had conscious awareness to the fact it was spirit or not, it was still happening at that very innocent age.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, so amazing. So I know that, if people have been on your website and reading your bio, part of what has been, your journey, I mean, you're very vulnerable and open in terms of the things that you've gone through. Coming forward as a medium, was it something that people just accepted? I mean, you said, family just kind of said, well, that's Kendra, that, there she's saying, but when you look at it in terms of friends and a larger circle or community, did you find that this was something about you that was easily understood or accepted?
I would say no. However, in saying that, it wasn't rejected, which I'm really, really grateful for.
Yeah.
Both of my parents have mediumistic gifts that they don't embrace. And we've never put that title on it. It's just a
Right.
conversation at the dinner table of, oh yeah, grandma brought me a message, or,
Right.
this happened and I happened to be called to be at this person, and my mom did CPR on somebody when she just like stumbled upon them. So that type of nature was just like so common in our house. So in the small world, it felt really comfortable. But to be honest, Bonnie, as I went into the public and I really identified as a medium and I stepped into that on like even a business level or a friendship
Hmm.
level, it got a little bit rocky. And it was
Yeah.
one of my really big fears of, how am I going to tell people? How do I explain this? And I have to say, I still remember the day that I put on Facebook when I was doing my business, and was like, I have to tell people I've done over 100 readings at this time. Like, they're miraculous, the healing, like, people need to know that this is how I can help them. And I just felt that massive calling, but I was petrified. And I had a friend who was cheering me on, and we like ramped this up for a week. I made this post on Facebook, and I literally posted it to say, like, I don't even remember, but something along the lines of, I've been doing healings and da. I'm able to connect to spirits and help da. And I posted it and I went for a run because I knew I just had to like get away, not get fixated. And I was just like, I'm out. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know what's gonna happen. And I did come back, and I had the courage to look again, and I was overwhelmed with love.
Mm.
And just people coming to me of like, thank you. I knew you were a little bit different. I didn't know what it was. I've always felt vulnerable with you, and it felt comforting. And so to other people, it made sense, which was really, really heartwarming for me to just know
Yeah.
that they saw that within me without even me knowing that.
Right.
So, and I think that's common for a lot of empaths, right? We are the people that everybody spills our life story in the grocery store, and they're like, I don't
Right.
know if I'm telling you that right now. I haven't seen you.
I
Happens all
know
the
you,
time.
but you just know everything about me right now. That happens to me all the time at airports and on airplanes where the people just tell me all their life story and then they're shocked because of how much they've divulged, right? And I just kind of giggle and say, yeah, I understand that. It's the nature of the
Yeah.
work I do.
Yeah. So in answering that, Bonnie, I would say that it's been accepted, but I still have fear. And even
Yeah.
going on this, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
this constant vulnerability of yeah, just accepting it over and over again and allowing people to accept that part of me. So it's never been an issue, but there's always that ego fear for whatever
Yes.
reason my soul wants to experience this lifetime.
Right. And I think you've really touched on something here important too. It's a continuous state of vulnerability.
Mhm.
Like we know this, it's just over and over. We continue to be vulnerable. We continue to be open. And, our sometimes our fear, we're the only ones who have the fear. We're the only ones who struggle with the acceptance. And, like in your story, this is what's so amazing is the outpour of support that you had where you were so, tied in knots over doing this. And everybody just went, yeah, like, of course you are, right? Which is even at that, it's almost shocking because it's not what was expected. But we as mediums trip over our fear all the time. Fear is something that we are continuously working through. There are mythologies and there are certain things we can do to help overcome and settle the ego. But the fear is always an undercurrent, it's always there in one state or another. So I don't know if there's even like if it's possible, I'm still waiting in some way to discover if it's possible to have eliminated every fear. Because I think that, no matter the healing journey we're on, there's always another layer. There's always something else that we need to take a look at. We need to consider. We need to, shift or within ourselves. And I always say, doing this path or taking this journey, we meet ourselves over and over and over and over. And it's continuous, as you said, vulnerability and this continuation of still always needing to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 And
Oh
that's
my.
always the bigger piece, right? Just remembering the gifts that I brought to people. I'm like, oh yeah, that's way cooler than my dinky fear of people being rejected, right? Like I've
Right.
healed so many people. It's bigger and better.
Right. And I love, and do you keep a little journal? I was talking about this with people the other night about this, how great it is to keep a journal or write those wins down. Look, so you can look back at times when you feel, a little bit insecure or uncertain.
I don't keep a journal, but I just have a lot of big things that poke out to me. If I ever doubt, there's one that'll easily, Spirit will bring that quickly to my mind. Remember this time? I'm like, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that. So now again, you have had these experiences throughout your childhood, and of course, working professionally. There's always that part, and I know that every medium goes through this too. It's like you kind of doubt and go, like, is this real? Is this real? Did this just happen? Like, there's almost like our ego is still twisted a little bit about, even though we might have done like 1,000 readings, the ego is still a little bit twisted or bent out of shape over it. But in saying that, in doing your work and working with people, like, do you have a story to share of something that just absolutely solidified your belief in the spirit world, your belief in the fact that this is as real as it gets?
I have lots. And I think it goes back to the beginning, like right after I had my training with you, Bonnie.
Mhm.
That's when I was first dabbling with it with other people, right? Not the same people in the group, but I called up, it was actually my husband's cousin who I was close with in the city. And so I was like, I just had this training. Like, how about you just come sit down and we'll see what happens? Like, I have no idea what's going to happen. Like, I've had really cool stuff happen before, but like, what the hell? Let's just try it out, right?
Yeah.
And before she came over, I was sitting in my room, in my meditation room, I was all grounded and stuff. And all of a sudden, I just felt, I closed my eyes, but I saw this, well, with my third eye, I saw this guy in the motorcycle. And I was just like, who are you? Like, you are front and center. And
Wow.
so I didn't know who this was. But then I clued in that this girl had lost her dad. And so I ran downstairs to my husband and I was like, did her dad drive a motorcycle? And he's like, oh yeah, like that was his thing. And I was like, oh my God, he is here with his motorcycle, like ready to talk to her. And he's like, yeah, that's totally his vibe. So she came in the house and I'm just like, your dad is here. It's on a
Like,
motorcycle. And she just burst out in tears of like,
oh,
yeah, absolutely. Like even on his, we went to his gravestone and he had a motorcycle, the exact one that I saw. It had this mountainous image and I just got
oh,
goosebumps of like, that was it. That is how he presented himself to me. So that was a huge one. I also had a big one just shortly after that. I think it was the next day that it was this girl's husband actually, and he was more skeptical. He was big and tough and all the things, but had a little bit of soft side that he was curious about.
yeah,
He actually meet him himself, but will never tell any of his welding people.
of course. Usually how it goes.
He doesn't meet the profile. So he was like, whatever, like I seen this on TV, but like I've known you forever. Let's see what you got. And he actually had pain in his shoulder for months. He literally couldn't lift his shoulder up anymore. He went to chiro and physio and all the things, and he exhausted all resources. And so he
Yeah.
came in, and I sat down, and I was like, "Oh my God, my shoulder!" He's like, "Yeah, tell me about it." And he went on and on and on about his shoulder and all these things, and I was like, "Let's just like move this." And so I do have some training in energy healing, and
Yes.
so I use the spiritual work with that. And I was like, "This sounds bizarre, but the energy is stuck, and I'm gonna move it, and it's gonna come out your thumb." He was like, whatever. Okay. And
Okay,
yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
2 days later, he messaged me and had this throbbing thumb pain. And it just, his shoulders pain was gone. It was all in his thumb and it released and he was good to go. He had full mobility.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
like, one, I wouldn't make that up. And two, I couldn't, but that's good
I,
shit.
even if you tried, I think another one of the guests even said, my imagination is just not even that good.
Like, I would never tell anybody that. That sounds crazy. Yeah.
Yes.
So it just
Yeah.
goes, I like the physical evidence with the spiritual evidence and really
Yes.
touching people's heart. So yeah, I have tons and tons of stories of even technology getting involved and how like my
Right.
Google has got involved before and brought me the message that spirit was trying to tell me that I couldn't identify. It's bizarre.
Wow. It's amazing all of the different ways that spirit uses our environment. So it's not just what's going on internally, it's everything around us too. Like you said, your Google is, giving you messages, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, okay. I know I've had even, it sounds really weird, and this is again aging me, but this is like going back where, our answering, I'd gone out grocery shopping and I came back and there was an answering, a call on the answering machine, right? And so it was still a landline and all that. We have a little unit all hooked up. So I played the message on the answering machine, and it was a message from the operator, but it would only be a message that if somebody from the house called out would have got, because it said the number you are dialing is currently not in service. Please hang up and dial again. And I was just like, whoa, like somebody was in the house using the phone, trying to call out somewhere. And my son was just like, oh my God, you think this is normal? This is not normal, mom. Like, I'm like, the house just literally called itself, like, just wild. But I also knew, again, in that was a very predominant message for a client the next day. Like, so even though it came in ahead of time and it didn't make sense in the moment, that all of a sudden, when I moved into session with someone, it was like, oh my gosh, it made perfect sense because her mother was actually a telephone operator. So it's like the craziest thing, right?
My goodness, right? And as soon as
Right?
you put up that space, it's everywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's so fun. It's so fun. And I love what you said too, how you're done the reading and then the husband comes. I've done a lot of those, the wife comes and they're like, bring the husband, and they're like all tough and not really sure about all this stuff. And then, they're, just a puddle by the time it's over, right? It's just so beautiful to witness and be a part of. So, when did you really realize for yourself, Kendra, that you really felt this call or this urge to really devote yourself to doing this work? What was it for you that really, where you just knew you needed to help people with your mediumistic abilities?
Um, Probably when I was doing counseling, so I was doing child and youth counseling, and I had many, many kids that were anxious, depressed, overwhelmed. School was a struggle, and all these symptoms, and they were scared at night. And I noticed a trend over and over and over again. And I was getting depleted with just my professional training as a social worker and as a therapist. And I could tell it was an energetic problem. Spirit kept telling me over and over again that this was more of a spiritual problem. These kids were empathically overwhelmed at school. They were taking on the collective energy. And there was a awkward boundary that I was in, that I had to wear my professional social work hat when I was treating them. But in my gut and in my knowing, I knew that it was actually more than that. And so it was a conversation I started to have. And I actually asked permission from my powers that be, of like, can I talk about these things? So I was teaching these kids
Yeah.
these emotional regulation things through energy, though, like how to protect themselves energetically. And so I was in like this blurred line, and then I saw a lot of adults and a lot of my readings then. So on my off time, I was doing readings, and then all these people, like, not only was I doing reading, then I needed my counseling at the same time. So I was in this awkward place of they needed both my services, but they weren't together.
Right.
So that's when I knew I needed to be like my own entity and just trust in
Yes.
spirit, taking the step forwards of helping people with no boundaries.
Right, right. Nobody's saying, it's like allowing for spirit to lead the way, for the angels to be the ones who were guiding what was in the highest and best, instead of being, dictated by some a governance or some way under your professional or legal kind of container. So yeah, it does. I noticed even for myself too. It was like where it's like. I started doing readings for people, and then there was this piece of not only the mentorship that started to take place, but I was finding that there was a lot of guidance that was really being given to them. And then people would be back and see me like a month later, and it was like the same guidance was coming through. And so that was where I started to be showing that I needed to help and coach people. I needed to help to, guide them and to apply these things in their life, and start to become more engaged that way. I was doing it for myself, but it was like this where spirit goes, no, this is your bias. This is your training. This is what you've been actually preparing for. And now we need you to bring it all to the table.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow, so incredible, so incredible. What has been, Kendra? I mean, now again, this is always a loaded question because we know within any journey, there's so many things that can come up. But what has been your biggest challenge in terms of your mediumship, in coming forward as a medium? Like, what have been the things that you've had to work to overcome?
My biggest fear was the fear of spirit. I knew
Uh,
that I was able to connect, but I was so petrified to connect. Um, as a young age, I had a really scary experience of spirit when they were trying to interact with me, and I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me. Nobody could have a conversation with me. I couldn't explain it. So I was really scared at a really young age, but it kept showing up in different ways. So thankfully, with doing work with you, you've taught me a lot of spiritual boundaries.
yeah.
Um, and to overcome the challenge now, I am more powerful than the spiritual world. I am able to protect myself. And so that has been the healing through that big challenge. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was scared of spirit in many ways. I was that little girl that was scared at night. I would run
Yes.
to my mom's room every night. I think I slept with my parents till I was 12 just because I was so afraid and I was so
Yeah.
intensely sensitive to the spiritual world. Like thinking back on it now, it's like, yeah, I had imaginary friends that I played with all day and then I tucked into my
Right.
closet at night. Like I've been
Right.
hanging out, lingering and mingling with them all night. And then like I try to go to rest and they don't want to rest, right? And
No,
so
they
then
still want to play.
yeah, they were keeping
Yeah.
me up at night and I
Yes.
didn't understand it. Um, so then as I grow older, I kind of shut off all those gifts and stuff because it didn't make sense to me. It was too intense. And then the courage to step back into what this could look like and communicate with them. And the intention of like, okay, I'm willing to see you was really, really scary, but
Yes.
it was
Yes.
a willingness. And I had to tiptoe with spirit and say, show me something gentle. Okay, show me something. Even I remember snowmobiling a couple of years ago and I was like, okay, I'm ready to see you all again. And I was like, but only throw me like silhouettes far in the bush. Like, don't close to me. Just like, I just want to know that I
Real
still have this.
campfire cave, you're over there.
Yeah. So it was
And then did
always,
you see them? And did you see them?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then spirit animals and stuff that weren't didn't actually exist. So I was like, do you guys see that? And I'm like, no, that there was no tracks, there was nothing, it was me. So it was really comforting for the spiritual world to work with me, to just say, okay, like I'll work with you if you work with me. And I just was like, hey, now show me somebody of
Hmm.
my loved ones. And it was a gentle energy. And so now I can yeah, tailor more of what I want to see to keep
Yeah.
me feeling safer and
Yeah.
protected and stuff like that. And then the spiritual world just brings me kind of those more alarming things in a different way. It's not always vision, it's the
Mhm.
sense of knowing or a different sensation or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. So
Yeah.
they
You
work with me, so I work with them.
Exactly, right. You're someone like me who had a lot of like trauma from those other experiences because just living in constant fear because you don't, there's no one to talk about, nobody to guide you through what's happening. You're having these experiences around you and you're afraid all the time from what you're seeing, what you're hearing. Like I remember just constantly hearing whispers and people talking all the time. It was like this static that was always there and some voices were louder than others and it was just like constant and it was like this trying to be normal as if nothing's happening while this whole other world is existing around you. My husband and I happened on this, we just went away for on the September long weekend and I was introducing him. It sounds crazy because we've been together like, almost 35 years, but I was introducing to him to a little bit more to my world in terms of what it's actually like to be me. He knows me very, he knows all about me, my heart and my, my desires. He knows how I think. He knows my values, everything. He knows me, inside and out. And yet there was this part of me that he never really, I guess I never really let him get to know before. This was something that was, and so I started to share with him some of the things that we'd experienced. I'd say to him, you know what, when we go into a restaurant, as kind as it is for you to let me go first, that's very chivalrous of you. I said, can you please walk in front of me? Can you please go first so that you can just slow down the energy and create a little bit of a barrier? Because when I walk into a restaurant, I get a waft and I'm hit. And I said, it's so hard for me to stay focused in this reality, because all of that energy is causing such disassociation. I actually don't know, like if you could walk in front of me, I can at least hold your hand and I can feel grounded and walk through the crowd at least, right? And he's like, I didn't know it that even was an issue. Like he had no idea. But it is, we live two worlds. We're connecting with the physical and non-physical worlds. And we as mediums, we live two worlds all the time. And there are times when that one world, that spirit world, can be more overwhelming than even our physical reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like, I think there's a piece that we normalize also. Like, I think of just a lot of my experiences as a kid, right? Like, I'm not very old to begin with, but like, I predominantly remember a lot of young things. I would never go in the basement, or if I went in the basement, I'd
Right.
turn every single light on. I'd
Yeah.
grab my Coke and I'd run up the stairs as fast as I could, right? Like,
Yes.
some people, like, we can normalize that, right? Like, kids are scared of the dark, but kids don't have egos until they're about 7 or 6 years old. And
Right.
so I went downstairs and like now I remember seeing them all hanging out there. All these spirits were
Mhm.
there, and no wonder I was petrified, right? Like they're
Yes.
strangers and spirits, and yeah, I didn't go down
Right.
there for years. But now I can be, but I also can feel it, right? I can feel when something's there, and I can feel I'm not. Even I have a garage right now at my house, and I'll go in there every day. And there was a man there last week, and I was like, I was like, no, it's just me like making things up. And I was like, no, it's
Yeah.
consistently. As soon as I open up that door, he was there over and over again. And so I was like, thankfully I can deal with this. Typically, I would never go in the garage. I would never just
Right.
go
You're
there
just
before,
done.
right?
Yeah.
We know
Never,
that.
never in the Gravito. No
Yeah.
more garage for me.
Yeah. So now at least I'm like, okay, now I just have the courage to deal with this and to face him. And now
Right.
it's clear. So it's really
Right.
good to have those gifts because it shows up in my everyday life.
Hmm. It
And
absolutely does. And I remember, as you described as a kid too, that like the basement was like this place, like even for me too. And I could just feel as I was stepping down, like just stepping into where all these spirits are, all of these, and as a little kid, you're taught not to talk to strangers, and yet you've got like a basement full of strangers, right? And you're just completely out of the zone with it. But I remember going up the stairs and feeling like they were all grabbing at my legs and grabbing at my ankles. Like they were all wanting me to come back
yes,
to talk to them.
yes.
And I remember too, my heart would just race and I would run up the steps as fast as I possibly could. And then it was like, oh, good, I got that done. Like it was just the
Yep,
trepidation of having to go downstairs to get something for my mom
yep.
was just like, oh, so debilitating almost.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that showed up like not only in the basement for me, but even like places in public or a closet or somebody's room or stuff. If
Yeah.
I notice it now, like, yeah, there's spirits in every one of those rooms that I was scared of.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
still get, I'm like, okay, there's that fear again, but I know how to go through it now at least.
Right. And that's just it. And I think there too, I love what you said too, Kendra. We work with the spirit world and we need to let them know that how they're presenting is overwhelming because as much as they are in non-physical, they do forget what it's like to be human, to have all those sensories taking place. So they don't even realize that they are overwhelming us. And
Mm.
so being able to say, especially if having experienced trauma from the spirit world where you're saying, just gentle things, from far away. Give me, only show me loving visions. Only show me, one of mine was, only show me who you are now in pure positive energy. I don't want to see you. I just want to see your ball. I just want to see your light. I don't want to see anything else, right? And it was one of the ways that they worked with me in order to settle and to, come into a place where, okay, now I'm okay with seeing and I'm okay. I'm not as caught off guard, but there's still times again, especially when it's a little bit denser, when there's still a trigger that goes off and it reminds you of the being that little girl running up the steps and wanting to
Yeah,
get out of there.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just I just love this conversation so much. What advice do you have? There's a lot of mediums that are tuning in terms they're on their journey, they're stepping forward, they're considering development. They've been living with this for a good majority of the time. Others have just woken up to their sensitivity. What advice do you have to those, because fear is something that we are challenged by? What, for those who are afraid of stepping forward or afraid of the spirit world, what advice do you have for them?
I just want to say you're not making that shit up. Like
Right?
all those hints, the consistency of those thoughts, just follow the guidance, right? Like if it's always there, it's persistent, right? And don't resist that persistence, because if it's leading you to where you want to go. And I know for myself, like my ego doesn't want to go there, but my
Right.
spirit does, my soul does. That is the journey. And I always think the most uncomfortable next step is exactly where I'm supposed to go. And
Mhm.
so it's not always about taking the easier thing, but it's doing the right thing for you. And it's not that you're not going to regret it, it's just going to be your fullest expression.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
more that you step into that calling, that knowing of who you know you are. I just
Yeah.
I even get this download, Bonnie, of like, if you're listening to a song and they're saying follow your dreams and take the courage, like whatever comes to your mind at that time, do that damn thing, because that's
Right.
what you're going
Exactly.
to, right?
Yes.
Don't leave it for another lifetime. Don't leave for the next decade. Like start taking the baby steps now. Just yeah, even out of
Yeah.
curiosity. So keep
Oh.
leaning in. And yeah, you're more powerful than you think. So it's,
Mm.
not just me and you do this. I always used to say, like, I'm just a basic white bitch, right? Like the spirits. I like my pumpkin spice and on my Ugg boots. And I honestly thought to be a medium, I needed to have these big crystals and
Right.
I needed
The
the
big,
different
the big
pumps and I
balls.
needed,
Yes.
yeah, I thought
Yes.
I'd wear these like certain clothes. Like it took me a long time to accept
Yeah.
like I'm just me, right? Like
Exactly.
and so even that the physical component, I had an ideology of what the proper spiritual person looked like.
Yes.
And I give anybody permission that like you don't even have to go to a yoga retreat looking like that, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
you don't need to change any part of who you are. You are already that is being called. So
Mm.
yeah, hopefully that's helpful of
Oh, that's
it to
so
be your
good.
weight or anything. Like
Yeah.
it's already you.
Yeah, it's already you. I love that. You don't need to change anything. It's how you've already been called. Like it's just
Yeah.
you and who you are and how you communicate and how you dress and how you live your life. It's perfectly good enough. Like, I
Yes.
know that Mavis Patilla, who is one of what would be one of the leaders in terms of mediumship. She's written many books and has done lots of trainings, for years and years and years. She's out of the UK. And she's someone which I loved most about her because I was kind of like that too. I didn't really fit the picture. Like people would say to me, "Oh, you're so normal. I didn't expect you to be so normal." Right? It like threw them off. And and she said, "You know what? She doesn't believe that we need to change who we are at all. You don't need to live a pure spiritual life in order to do this work. If you smoke, smoke. If you drink, drink. It doesn't matter. The spirit has chosen you for who you are as you are, and just none of that like is required in order to do this job." And I was like, "Oh, I'm so relieved," because even when I would think about, this whole aspect of being a witch or something like that, I'm like, I'm allergic to cats. Like I can't even have a cat, like it was, I don't fit into that at all. And so it is just, and what I love what Mavis said is just like, just smoke if you smoke, drink if you drink, just be who you are and do this work. You don't need to do anything different,
And I
be
feel that
anything different.
that's what normalizes the human experience with all
Right.
these other mediums, right? It's just like
Yes.
we're as basic and complex as you, right?
Right.
And we can smoke together and do a little session, like we can
Right.
spiritually smoke.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
A
I've
lot of
even had
people,
Yeah, and
yeah,
I've had the mediums question too. Like some have said to me, like Bonnie, I find that if I have a glass of wine, I actually get more relaxed and spirit actually becomes clearer for me. And they were thinking that it was wrong for them to have the glass of wine prior to them doing a session, or in the evening they might have a glass of wine with dinner and then they're doing sessions in the evening. And so they were really questioning whether this was a right practice. And
hmm
first and foremost, I said, well, one, I said, kudos to you because you give me a glass of wine. Don't trust anything that's coming out of my mouth after that glass of wine. I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know where it's coming from. But on the flip side of it, I said, when we look back into the biblical ages, even Jesus broke bread and drank wine. And so
right.
give yourself permission to drink, have a glass of wine. If a glass of wine causes you, for the ego, the barriers to come down and you feel a little bit more tuned in, go ahead and do that. I don't recommend showing up drunk for your sessions. Like, that's not what I'm recommending, but just, honor yourself with what works for you. There's no one fits all approach to doing this work. And we are so uniquely different. So it is about just expressing you in the way that you're uniquely called. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just want to say to that, like sometimes when I do readings, I'll have dinner or something and I'll be craving something. I'll be craving a tea or I'll be craving a wine. And I'm like, this is not like me, but I'm like having some wine during the session. And they start laughing. Oh, I always have wine with my grandma. Of course, that just shows she's with you. And it's like, oh, thank God, because I kind of feel weird. Like, it was just this demand from the spirit, though. It's like, have a glass of wine at the session. I was just like,
right.
Normal, but and then, that person went, got a glass of wine, they relaxed, they could receive better. And it was like you're having a conversation with grandma around the table, right? Like it was
Oh,
part of the
beautiful.
experience instead of all these. I'm just not a rule follower. I'm gonna
No,
go,
I know, me neither.
give me a rule, I'll break all of them and tell you 10 reasons why I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, I know. I have that indigo spirit, right? That one is that says they're going to tell you over here that this is how you do it, and you're going to go left, right, and it's black. And I'm going to say, no, 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 no. I'm going to turn circles and do cartwheels, and I'm going to tell you why it's white.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So people give me a rule and it doesn't really work very well. So if you told me not to do it, right, it just doesn't
Right.
feel right. I'm like, no, this is, yeah. So there's no rule in the spiritual world because,
Right.
yeah, they just are normal and we got to
And
break all those rules, I think, of programming.
yeah, breaking the programming. That's exactly it. And there's even, when we look at the ideology of mediumship, the consciousness of mediumship that's out there, what the rules are, what a person needs to look like, how you do this work, what, etc. This is no, no, no. This is about releasing yourself from that unhealthy consciousness and for you to do you in the way that spirit communicates with you. And I know through my program, I share how I do this work. Lots of people are like, wow, this works for me. There's things that people take away that they still use to this day, and some other things that they don't. It's just I'm not offended because they don't do it exactly the way I do it, but it's about, here, let me share the tools, let me share how this works for me, and then you make it your own from there. Find out how spirit works with you and then run with it.
Absolutely. And I
And
love that you've given me that freedom in the development of my mediumship because you're right. There's something you teach and you're like 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, no, go.
go.
Like, I don't do the 1, 2, 3.
I'm not waiting for that. No,
Like
I'm
hit the ignition, I'm gone. Like
yeah, that's your
stuff.
fire though. That's, you
Yeah.
can't slow down an air and a fire in this. I mean, for the earth people, that's great. Water loves the
Yes,
what,
yes.
but for fire and air, that's a completely different
Yeah,
experience.
but to give you it, like if you would have kept me in that box, Bonnie, I've been
Right.
like this, I've been frustrated. So
Yes.
you giving that freedom and acknowledging people in that way has really been helpful for me because
Oh, I'm so
yeah,
glad.
I do my own thing. But
Right.
the guide, like it's been so helpful, right? And
Yes.
if I
It's
get
so
stumbling,
great
I'm
to
like
have a
doing the thing.
template, right? It's like I give you a template and you
Yeah,
get to design that template based on what works best for you.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have been. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, so good. Kendra, there, of course, as I said, there's a lot of mediums that are tuning in for support in their development and on their journey. We also have people who are joining us in learning more about the spirit world because they are dealing with a loss of a loved one, which, of course, we know is the nature of our work, but is also one of the hardest things in which we as humans to navigate the loss of someone we love. So, what advice do you have for those attending this event who are navigating the loss of their loved ones?
I just want to say, most importantly, the guidance that always comes through is don't forget about them and don't stop talking about them.
Yeah.
Like they want to be talked about, they want to be remembered, they want their name in the room. So just not fearing that grief is really important. And just there's ongoing evidence in every session and in every aspect of life. If it's the dime in the shower or the random flower you see or something, I've learned that spirits work so hard to communicate with us,
Mhm.
and it's just our own ego that we're too cool to think that that's something. But my grandma, I just remember her telling me she's passed, and she's just like, I'm trying so hard to catch your attention, and you're just too cool thinking it's not good enough. And I was like, well, it's just this, it's just that. She's like, yeah, like I'm doing the things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I know, like, and even as a medium, it's grief is extra hard, it feels like, because I feel everybody's heart.
Yes.
Um, but they're always with you. They always want your attention. And just don't forget about them. Keep like
Mhm.
go to these sessions, talk with them, interact with them, play their favorite song, like keep their spirit alive in a way because they're still around you and they still want to be with you over and over again. And
Right.
permission to this is a weird thing coming through for me right now. I shouldn't say weird, but
Whoop.
whoever needs to hear this, it's something of it's safe to move on, right? If you've
Mhm.
lost somebody, a spouse perhaps, like it's also there's safe to move on.
Yes.
And whatever that means, right? Like sometimes that is part of the journey and grief is ending one thing and starting another is what I've seen over and over again. And sometimes that's what my sessions are, is just people want to sell the house, right? They want to
Right.
change things, they want to sell their clothes, they want to whatever. Like there's joy in that, there's purpose in that too, of
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know who needed
I
to
think
hear
that's so beautiful because I think that's a big piece is that you do have permission and your loved ones do want you to move forward. They want nothing more than for you to be happy. They truly do. And so any steps we can take through our grieving process that are helping to nurture our hearts, take care of ourselves, and find our smile and our laughter again, that's what they're encouraging. I also love, Kendra, that you say, talk about them, talk about them. I had a girlfriend who lost her son, and she told me the hardest thing for her was she would just go for groceries and that people would avoid her in the grocery aisle because they were too uncomfortable or didn't know what to say or didn't, or even if they did come into that grocery aisle, it was just really awkward. And she said, like, she loved her son. Like, bring him up, ask about how she's doing, ask about, let's talk about him. Because for her, she didn't want him to be gone. And of course, the more we talk about them, the more we remind ourselves, play their favorite music, do all of these things, it helps to keep them close with us, right? That
yeah.
love continues.
And I
Yeah,
think there's a piece to just remember the good instead of the sad that they've left you with, but like
yeah,
the good, right? Like
yeah,
Halloween was their favorite season, I'm gonna have the pumpkin pie because that was their favorite. Like
right.
keeping those little pieces along. And as I do grief counseling lots, it's talking about them, right? Doing the things and say
Yes,
their name. I'm sometimes exactly that. I'm the only person who's like, so how's Tyler? And they're just like, oh, nobody have said his name. It's that, it's them, it's they don't
yes,
know, but go into it. Like they existed, and as a
yeah,
spirit, they always tell me, like, talk about me. Like bring
yes,
back the Christmas time.
yes,
Remember the goofy things or ridiculous things I did because they left an impact on you, and
yes,
they
yes.
that want to go forward.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And of course, as they go on to the other side, there's always the reconciliation of things too. Like there is part of their healing on the other side is to be able to apologize. And, whether we ever forgive them or not is not, I mean, do we encourage it? Of course, but they don't need to forgive for us to forgive them or not. They simply need to be able to apologize. And so there too. It's okay to be angry at them. It's okay to not want to talk to them.
Mhm.
I even have people coming for sessions and will say, like, there are certain individuals on the other side that they do not want to have a conversation with. Like, they say, it's so terrible of me, but I'm actually happy they're gone. And it's like, no, that's not terrible. Like, it's okay to feel that way. It truly is. So this is about honoring yourself with what in whatever way you need to honor yourself through the grieving process, and then like you said, talk about them, bring them, remember the good that existed there, right? Don't lose sight of that. Yeah, because our sorrow can sometimes override it.
Yep,
Yeah,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. All
That's
right,
our
Kendra, we're
freedom.
gonna we're gonna change directions here. We're gonna pop in over to the chat, and I want to looking for comments and questions here as we're bringing into the wrapping up our conversation. Veronica is saying, "Thanks so much for explaining how you progressed through your fear of seeing spirit." She said, "Such good tips." Right? I mean, this is why I love these conversations, because there's certain things that I know that I've done to help and support myself in this, but here's you coming forward and saying, and this is what I've done. I think it's so great to be able to bring that into the conversation. I agree, Veronica. Such great advice. Gail is asking a question for you both. Do you both now help children understand their spiritual gifts? I'll let you start, Kendra.
It's in the chapter book, but I haven't got there yet, specifically children. I help them more on the energetical piece, I'll say for now, of protecting themselves in that. Maybe not always talking to spirits, but normalizing whatever they're going through. It also takes a courageous parent to acknowledge that this is what their kid is experiencing. And so I work a lot with the parents more so to normalize what their kid's going through when they're scared at night or whatever, how to protect them, put a rainbow over their bed to make them safe at night. So more like tips and techniques like that. Because it's also hard for kids to understand. I have a few 14-year-olds or like that I've worked with. So yeah, it happens through the grapevine, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. Gail, to answer your question, yes, I've worked with several psychic children and little mediums, so to speak, over the years, from the tender age of like 4 and 7 even. And like Kendra said, it takes a parent with a lot of very courageous parent to be able to come forward and really honoring their child and saying there's something more that needs to be understood. And so again, working with both the parent and the child in helping to offer the techniques and the ways in which to you know kind of settle down the fears and help them to understand what's going on. And then of course, even in my training programs, I've had, children, as young as 10 that have come through the program, even though they're not maybe, out in the community. They're, again, it's in the sanctuary and the confidence of what's being shared. But yeah, at a very young age, I've worked with a lot of children because, and again, being a child, and I think this is where it is, I remember firsthand what it was like to be so afraid and to have some of the altercations, even with the darker energies that were there. Like, I had a very tumultuous childhood. And so there were a lot of, great experiences I had with spirit, but there were a lot of not so great ones where I actually, had scratch marks and I had things on my body because of something of an encounter that I had through the middle of the night. And so, I work with children who are in that same cusp of experiences as well. And of course, working with the parents to raise the vibration of the home, to give them the skills and the tools so that they can basically create a neutrality and peace for their child until it's such time that they grow up where they maybe want to develop or learn a little bit more about it. So yeah, it's definitely a part of things for sure. She's also wondering here. She says, and now I'm wondering about multiple personalities, different dominant spirits. I love this question. I got an answer, Kendra, but have you ever had any experiences with multiple personalities?
On like a mental health level or spiritual level?
I'm going to say this is different dominant spirits. Let's
You
talk.
go
Yeah.
first, Bonnie.
Okay, so yes, absolutely. So there is absolutely times where individuals can have attachments, wayward spirits that can be affecting their personality and their behavior, where they become much more dominant than the individual spirit inside of their body. And so I've actually worked with a young gentleman several years ago who actually had 3 different spirits that were embodying or attached or with him, that every time he came for a session, I actually didn't know who it was I was going to be talking with. So it was a matter of, working, and we did, and again, working to release these spirits so that this young man could actually just have some peace in his life and be totally within the sovereignty of his own existence. And so, yeah, definitely have had direct work in that as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And mental
Yeah.
health, I know you probably see it on a mental health level. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we
Yeah.
call it mental health, right? And
Yes. I
I say
know.
that
It's so what's
bravely.
going on. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
we put it in that box for us to make sense sometimes.
Yeah.
But I work, I guess, safely more with the psychic attacks and everything like that, like, and just those scary spirits and more house clearings. That component I haven't worked so intricately with what you were talking about, Bonnie, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
exists, right?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does exist. And when we look at a lot of people will have major problems in their homes. Again, within issues in terms of again, what's labeled or understood as being a form of mental illness, which actually has been, in terms of what we could, it sounds like a real extreme word, but it's almost like a possession of another spirit that is almost, looking to, embody their body, right? They still have ties to earth, and they, for whatever reason, based on a vulnerability, and the spirit, is looking, or is always challenging the individual for who gets the body. It sounds really weird to say it that way, but that's basically what happens. Yeah. Brenda, I love it. Brenda says, what a great conversation. So many nuggets of wisdom. The discussion about fear of the dark gives me a whole new perspective of children who are afraid of the dark. Yes,
There's a reason.
absolutely. Absolutely. Any child, I want, just looking at kids who, of course, have imaginary friends like Kendra and I did, play by ourselves for hours and have a really great time. That's an indication of a child having childhood, or what would be type 1 mediumship abilities. So their onset child abilities. Children who are afraid of the dark, who need to sleep with lights on at nighttime. Anything like that. I know a lot of adults who still need to sleep with the lights on or have some form of white noise in their room because of it. It has to do with the spirit world and their sensitivity, other than any other excuse they're ever going to come up with.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sandra says, I was always afraid of the basement growing up as well. Right? What is it with those basements? And I was scared at night as a child because she too would see things at nighttime. Yeah, absolutely. Julie is asking, how do you tell the other parent that the headstone that they chose is not what spirit actually likes? Oh, what would you recommend there, Kendra?
What do I tell a person? Oh, that their head. Mm, that's a tricky one. And thanks for bringing thanks for bringing that up, because that's a big question and situation to navigate through. If there was any evidence of more of what they desire, I would take that route of things that they enjoy and incorporating, taking that logical approach of putting that on their headstone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very dependent on the spirit that I would be connecting with, Julie. So it's really, in that there would be some spirit that would be just like, tell it like it is. And so there will be this, like, I just need to tell you, your son, your daughter, your spouse, actually doesn't like the headstone that you chose. And just like saying, like, I'm really sorry I have to say this, but that's what they're telling me, and just doing it. And then, you might even find that the person laughs, or there's something, they're like shocked. What, really? I took so long, and, trying to pick it out, etc. And again, it might come with a, you don't need to change it, but just so you know, like, it wouldn't have been my first choice, things like that. Just offer it in what will be as gentle as well as humorously as what you possibly can, just to kind of make light at it, so not to offend your sitter, and just really, and it just depends on your sitter as to how to approach that as well. But trust in the delivery that spirit is offering it. Like, just trust. Oh, she said it's her mom said it's not, it's not her. She doesn't like my dad's choice. Yeah. Okay. So, hey, dad. So I don't know if that's something that, so there's the difference here. If you are dealing with someone who does believe in communication with the spirit world, then you can openly say, you know what, dad, mom came to me. She's not really happy with the headstone. It wouldn't have been her choice. Like, she doesn't mean to hurt your feelings or anything, but she just wants to be honest and let you know. You can say it that way. Or if you're dealing with someone who doesn't believe, we can still deliver messages to people. We don't need to reveal the source of where we get this information from. And you could simply say to your dad, I'm not sure if that would have been mom's first choice, dad. I mean, you invested, you picked something special out for her, but I just have a feeling that maybe that wouldn't have been her first choice. So it's all about delivery. It's all about, and again, we always need to be very conscientious. That's the one thing in doing this work, is we always remember that the person in front of us is grieving. So we always want to be as gentle, as considerate, and we also don't want to dilute how things are being said either, because those can be the very evidential pieces that someone needs in order to ensure that they know you're connected to their loved one. So you always, if they're being blunt and they're being direct, then it's like, hey, I'm just going to say something. It's not normally how I talk, but your loved one's being very blunt and very direct and they'll be like, oh yeah, that was exactly what Granny was like, like it's just sharing a part of those personality traits. Yeah. Well, I wish you luck with that, Julie, because I know that will be, again, a very gentle conversation. Yeah, for sure. Veronica said, you talked about aggressive spirits and other scary stuff. Yeah. Can you tell spirit and your team, I don't want to deal with that because it freaks me out? You absolutely can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a part of your boundaries there, Veronica. Being able to be very specific, again, and of course, in going through level 1, we take a look at the things you don't want to experience. We need to get clear on what we don't want to experience, and you get to tell them. And I know I certainly did. That was an agreement that I made with the spirit world where I said, okay, I will go ahead and do this work, but I don't want you guys showing up in any disfigurement or scary apparitions. I don't want to see your death scene. You can tell me about it. I'm okay with if you give me a sense or a feeling of what happened, but I don't want a clairvoyant vision of it. And also where I said, I will go ahead. I made an agreement with the angels where I said, I'll go ahead and do this, but you guys create a sacred barrier so that I'm only dealing with spirits who have fully crossed over to the light. I don't want any of those other interactions. And that's when I began my practice. I had that up as a very strong boundary. And it was over time and through becoming more empowered and more secure in my connections and doing my own work to heal the limitations and my own fear that I was able to let those boundaries go. And now I'm not as rigid within them, but spirit honored it. And again, invoking your angels to do this with you is highly beneficial. We just need to ask. We just need to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a great question too. Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, good way to explain. I'm glad that resonated, Julie. Tara, there we go. I love that. Really enjoying the sessions. Give me lots to think about, lots of great stories. I know so many stories. Like every single medium has like stories upon stories, whether it's been their personal experiences, whether it's been things that they've witnessed or seen in in a session with a client. It's just like this is the stuff, as I say, that what goes on in my client sessions is so profound and so miraculous that there isn't, and I've done lots of them. So, and it's like nobody can tell me any different that this isn't real. Nobody, like naysayers, whatever, you guys go ahead, believe as you need to believe, because I know what I'm experiencing. I know what's happening in those sessions. And that's what I keep relying on. And that's what I keep falling back on. Yeah. Yeah. So good. Well, oh my gosh, here we are. Oh my gosh, I so love it. Veronica's even saying it's been so helpful in so many ways she didn't even see coming. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Ashley, validation about those childhood struggles for sure. And some mediums, don't come into their connection or their awareness of the spirit world until later on in their life. And so, they don't necessarily have that same storyline that goes into this. But for those who have child onset abilities, it definitely can be a struggle. And to know in the world that there are people like Kendra who are out there and who are saying, well, let me help to teach you about some protection. Let me help you take it in another direction so that you don't have to be so stressed. I think it's beautiful, beautiful. Kendra, thank you so much for taking time out, for sharing your story, your wisdom, and being a part of tonight's conversation. And of course, to everyone else who has been here with us as a part of this evening's conversation, thank you so much for making A Medium's World a part of your night over these 10 days. Tomorrow, I'm so excited to welcome to the conversation Emma McDonald, who will be joining us as well to share her inspiring story and her journey into mediumship. Thank you, everyone. God bless. Kendra, take care of yourself. And again, much, much appreciation for you being here with me. All right, everybody. Okay, bye for now.